As most of you know, today is sometimes called Buddha Day, sometimes called Bodhi Day, the day of the Buddha's enlightenment, December 8th. And if you've been part of this community for a while, you've heard me talk about this every year, and you can probably write tonight's talk in advance. But I thought I would point out two parts of the story, because we always come back to the story. Two parts of the story that feel particularly relevant to me today and every day. The first is just before the Buddha becomes the Buddha, when he's Siddhartha. And he's been sitting beneath this tree with this resolve, with this resolute stability. And we've talked about this story many times before. There's a feeling in the telling that his awakening, whatever that was, at some point was a foregone conclusion, because his resolve was so great. And the tree felt it, and the clouds felt it, and the birds felt it, and everybody knew that this was in motion. And so Mara, who is the great distractor, Mara is the character who wants to keep people away from awakening, who wants to keep people asleep. Mara shows up. And here the story gets very exciting, and there are arrows involved, and there are seductive women involved, and a lot of things happen. And at one point, when Mara just is very frustrated with this whole process, because the Buddha is unwavering, he asks the Buddha, yes, Siddhartha, at this point, essentially, who are you to be doing this? And we hear this same story 1,000 years later with Bodhidharma. And the Emperor Wu says, who are you to stand before me and talk to me like this? And in that case, Bodhidharma says, I don't know. In this case, it's a little different. What Mara asks is, who will testify on your behalf that you deserve to be here doing this? Who stands for you? And in response, the Buddha, or Siddhartha, I always get it mixed up. He's not the Buddha yet. Siddhartha reaches down. He doesn't say a word, but he reaches down with his hand and he touches the earth. And the earth testifies on his behalf. He calls the earth as his witness. And in the story, the earth sometimes is personified almost as Mother Earth. So it's felt. But it doesn't have to be. He calls on the entire world to say, I deserve to be here. I don't have to move. This path is open to me. No one can get in my way. No one can deny me this. No one can say that I am not worthy of this. And part of what I find so beautiful about that moment, because it sounds so confident, and it's sometimes told in a way that seems so certain. There is a kind of certainty to it because of that resolve. But this is before he's the Buddha. This is before his awakening. This is before he knows what he's doing or where it's headed. So there's this certainty that he belongs here. But it doesn't come from a place of knowing the whole story. He's still on a journey. He doesn't know how that journey ends. He only knows that it's his and that no one can get in his way. And so he reaches down and he calls on the earth, the entire earth, to back him up. And it does. That's part one. And then part two is just after. There's this awakening. And I never want to guess at what that was. But some puzzle piece fit for him. And now he's the Buddha. He found what he was looking for. He saw what he came to see. Mission accomplished. And he stands up, and Mara comes back one last time. Mara has given up at this point, with the arrows and everything. But he tries one last move. Kind of starts walking next to the Buddha, and he says, "Look, you beat me. You did a really good job. I couldn't get in your way. But now, what? What are you going to do? You've achieved the highest thing there is. You've surpassed everyone's expectations. There's nothing left for you here. The next step for you is nirvana. You should just dissolve. Let go of the rest of your worldly trappings. Let go of your body. Let go of the suffering of being someone who has to take a next breath. Go to the next place." And the Buddha is agonizing over this because the Buddha doesn't know if he can teach anything that he just saw. He knows he can't just lay it out. He knows he can't just write it down. And so once again, 2 hours later, he's in a position where he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know how he's going to do what he needs to do. But he makes a decision that it is better, essentially, to try and fail than to not try. It is better to live this practice in service of others and fall short than to have some sort of perfect exit. Now, the Bodhisattva path as a teaching didn't really come into shape until a few centuries after this moment. And what he embarks on here is not exactly the same as what we would usually describe as the Bodhisattva path. And yet we hear in this conversation, in this moment, in this decision, the flavor of it for the first time in the story. This willingness to turn the practice into service, even in the absence of an understanding of how. He doesn't know what he's going to do. He doesn't know what he's going to say to that first person that he meets. He doesn't know if everything that follows this moment will be a failure or not. And yet he leans into that. And he makes that his path. His willingness to not know. His willingness to fail. His willingness to fall short. These two moments in the story, to me, feel so important. One just before and one just after. They're not the shiny moment. They're not the moment that we act as if the whole story is about. These are moments in which the Buddha gets very, very clear in his own mind, short of some mystical experience, short of some supreme insight. He gets clear in his own mind about how he's going to do what he does. Even if he's still a little bit lost. All of us can wonder very sincerely if this path is really for us. And I don't mean whether or not it's a fit, but it can sound pretty lofty sometimes. And we can look in the mirror and we can think, is this for me? Am I that? When I say these vows, is that real? Am I qualified? Before he's even the Buddha, Siddhartha offers a teaching that the answer is yes. And that you need look no further than where you are right now for proof, for verification, for support. The ground you're standing on is the ground that's holding you up in this practice. The step that's immediately in front of you is the step that's there for you on this path. Take it. No apologies. No doubt. You don't have to know where it leads, but your foot belongs there. Whatever you see or don't see, whatever about this practice is clear or unclear, you move forward with it as an act of generosity. Again, not because you know what you're giving, but because you don't know what you're giving, and yet you still know that you have to give. That's what shut Mara up for the last time. Looking at the Buddha standing there and recognizing that it didn't matter if he knew how to do it. It didn't matter if he had a plan or not. It was that just like a couple hours ago beneath the tree, he was moving in this resolute stability. He had stood up and he had begun walking in a straight line, and he was never going to veer. He was never going to turn back. He was never going to give up. I don't know about everyone out there. I hope this isn't the case for everyone. But I feel compressed sometimes. And I think I could say that no matter what. But this year, there's a lot. And the weight of the world is a lot. There's a lot of suffering. And with our witnessing of all that suffering, for me, sometimes there's a feeling of helplessness. I've been noticing the last few weeks that I have a feeling in my head that a year ago I would have called a headache. It doesn't exactly hurt, but it's chronic. It's a little bit of a squeeze. And that's what this year feels like to me. If I spend too much energy on that, it starts to push me down. It can come with a feeling of if not despair, something like, well, I'll try again tomorrow. And in those moments, I have to remind myself that there is no right and there is no left, and there is no stopping. I have to remind myself in those moments to stand up straight again, because I can feel myself shrinking. I have to remind myself in those moments to take another step forward, even if I have no idea why. I suspect I'm not the only one. So on this day and every day, but on this day, as we think about this moment beneath this tree, what I wish for you is that you will feel deeply that this is a path where you belong. That nothing about you is falling short of the demands of this path. No matter how you may feel, no matter how inadequate you may feel, no matter how lost you may feel, at any given moment, this ground is your ground. This path is your path. And I'm happy to be on it with you.